Welcome to KYC Media News. We bring you the greatest and most up-to-date news of the day, and we invite you to stay tuned. Saudi Crown Prince to visit Turkey. Syria's nuclear deal with Iran. Ukraine struck Black Sea. The Ukrainian naval force guaranteed on Friday that it struck a Russian boat conveying air protection frameworks to an essential island in the Black Sea. In an explanation via online entertainment, the naval force said the Vasily Bek was utilized to ship ammo, weapons and staff to Snake Island, which is essential for safeguarding ocean paths out of the critical port of Odessa. It didn't say how much harm it caused with the strike. Snake Island, found nearly 35 kilometers off the coast, figured significantly from the get-go in the conflict when Ukrainian line monitors positioned their opposed Russian orders to give up, utilizing brilliant language that later turned into a revitalizing cry. The leader of Russia's Black Sea Armada, utilized in the capture of Snake Island, was soaked in April by Ukraine, a significant upset for the outmanned and outgunned Ukrainian powers, which took full advantage of innovation and knowledge from the US to focus on the boat. The Ukrainian Navy said on Friday that after the sinking of the lead Moskva, the Russians started to introduce an enemy of airplane rocket framework called TOR on the decks of their boats. It said that was sufficiently not to keep Ukraine's maritime powers from disarming the Russian occupiers. There was no prompt response from Russian specialists about the Ukrainian case. Regardless of the evident achievement, Ukraine has asked its partners to rush more and better weapons to the nation, saying it can't hold off Russia's all the more remarkable powers without more help. Western weapons have been basic to the beset country's astonishing achievement up to this point. Saudi Crown Prince to visit Turkey. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed Receptacle Salman will visit Turkey on June 22, a senior Turkish authority told AFP Friday, as Ankara and Riyadh continue on from the 2018 homicide of writer Jamal Khashoggi. It is Prince Mohammed's most memorable visit to Turkey since the fierce killing of Khashoggi inside the Saudi department in Istanbul, which stunned the world and managed a weighty disaster for ties between the provincial opponents. The subtleties of the visit will be reported over the course of the end of the week, the authorities said. The two nations will consent to a few arrangements during the outing, as most would consider to be normal to be in the capital Ankara. However, the area is yet to be affirmed, the authority added. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had proactively visited Saudi Arabia in late April, where he met the sovereign prior to venturing out to Mecca. The pair evaluated the Saudi-Turkish relations and ways of creating them in all fields, Saudi state news organization SPA said at that point. Saudi specialists killed and dissected Khashoggi, an insider turned pundit, in the realm's Istanbul department in October 2018. His remaining parts have never been found. Erdogan recently said that most elevated levels of the Saudi government requested the killing, and Turkey infuriated the Saudis by enthusiastically seeking after the case, opening an examination and preparation worldwide media about the startling subtleties of the homicide. Turkey previously had stressed relations with Saudi Arabia in light of its help to Qatar during the Riyadh Drove bar on the Gulf state. However, relations were frozen for a very long time after Khashoggi's killing. Saudi Arabia answered at the time with an informal blacklist of Turkish imports, coming down on Turkey's economy. Presently, with high expansion and a typical cost for many everyday items emergency a year prior to an official political race, Erdogan is looking for support from Gulf nations. Three Palestinians were killed. The relationship between Poland and Israel must evolve. The famous saying goes, every cloud has a silver lining. Things do not always work out for the best, but fortunately, sometimes they do, as may be the case in the newest edition of the Polish-Israeli dispute over history and its present-day implications. This time, the controversy revolves over Israeli youth's trips to Poland, where they visited Holocaust-related sites in significant numbers prior to the outbreak. They were arriving, visiting, marching in the March of the Living, and then departing with the impression that they had visited a murderous country. Because it is home to Auschwitz, Treblinka, Beek, Chemno, and Sobibor. Modern teenagers are rarely interested in details such as the occupation of Poland and the mass death of Poles by Germans. They see persons in their immediate environment and simply aim their observations and charges of culpability or inaction towards them. This was made simpler by the trip organizers, who made little effort to convey the Holocaust's backdrop. They seemed to enjoy disregarding or concealing the fact that Germans were responsible for the crime, while tacitly supporting the process of painting Poland and Poles as the perpetrators. The nature of such travels, which were safeguarded by armed Israeli special forces agents and buses that were closely monitored, aided this process. The danger aura was skillfully created. Who did you get it from? The Poles of today. Gas chambers and crematoriums in the background shaped a lifelong attitude toward Poland for these visiting youth. A distorted, often downright false past of Poland and the picture of a modern-day country full of purported dangers formed a very potent, emotional concoction. Following the outbreak, Poland refused to allow the excursions to continue in their previous form and suggested that talks be undertaken with Israel. These are currently taking place, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the form of exchanging mutual views on a draft of a new agreement. This was a very bold and correct move on the Polish side, a move that would never have happened if it hadn't been for the recent history war waged between Warsaw and Jerusalem. It began with a change to the Act on the Polish Institute of National Remembrance, IPN, which made public discourse blaming Poland for the Holocaust illegal. That was only the beginning, as the Polish Prime Minister and Israeli officials who made statements about anti-Semitism ingested from mother's milk were subjected to harsh and dishonest accusations. It came to a close when both countries' ambassadors withdrew. Diplomats from Israel have returned to Warsaw, while the Poles have yet to arrive in Tel Aviv. Ironically, it was Israel that crossed the line and responded aggressively, allowing Poland to take previously unthinkable actions like modifying the regulations for organizing trips. The Polish government was given the chance to address the problem at its source, albeit this is only one source, and likely not the most important, and they took it. Of course, this is part of a larger picture. Israel's political elites handled Poland so cruelly, violently, and cynically that there isn't much to lose in this area now. It is the proper decision to take time to restore connections and act assertively, especially since it was not Poland that demolished the existing diplomatic apparatus. If relations are to be repaired, they must be done in a far more balanced manner than previously. Syria's nuclear deal with Iran. Israel's assault on Damascus air terminal last week features the significance of an arrangement among Iran and the West to Syria. Close by Syria's conflict, one more clash among Israel and Iran has been discreetly continuing. Unfortunate of Iranian entrenchment across the boundary in Syria, Israel has sought after it taking care of the lawn technique to counter Tehran's impact, which has involved endless Israeli assaults on Iranian-moved powers in Syria, from the Fatimiyan Brigade to Hezbollah. With Russia, basically until this year, not holding up traffic of Israel's assaults against Tehran's partners and interests in Syria, and the United States giving its unrestricted help to Israel's pugnacity, Tel Aviv has had the option to act with absolute exemption in Syria. In this manner, it was not really a tremendous shock on June 10 when Israel completed air goes after that harmed Damascus International Airport, constraining it to close down. Israeli news sources have revealed that Israel made this move on account of Iranian weapons being moved to Syria by means of the air terminal. The focusing of the air terminal happened against the scenery of proceeding with talks to resuscitate the atomic arrangement among Iran and the West. Exchanges have, be that as it may, slowed down, with a reconstituted bargain presently looking doubtful. In 2015, when the atomic arrangement was first marked, al-Assad cheerfully hailed the atomic arrangement's marking as a noteworthy accomplishment, while hostile to system rebels communicated their apprehensions that the agreement would prompt an expansion in Iranian impact in the district. After 7 years, a restored atomic arrangement would comparatively charm the Syrian president. On the off chance that Tehran and Washington can find a center ground that outcomes in the arrangement being rescued, Iran would turn out to be less detached on the global stage, which would help the Syrian government. Such a situation would add to the worries of the Turkish-supported Syrian resistance. Keeping up with their grasp on pieces of northern Syria's Idlib region, these enemy of Assad powers stress that a facilitating of U.S. strain on Tehran could make al-Assad more certain about his journey to reconquer every last bit of Syria, compromising the large numbers of Syrians who have conformed to the nation's resistance. Millionaires are fleeing Putin's hell. Russia is in a real sense losing cash hand over fist. New information let Friday out of the British Defence Ministry shows the stunning number of Russian moguls who are attempting to get the damnation out of the country this year. Relocation applications recommend that 15,000 Russian tycoons are probably previously endeavoring to leave, the service said, with most going to the United Arab Emirates and Australia. The news compares with a concentrate recently by the London-based Henley & Partners, which works with residency applications and citizenship applications and which has evidently seen an increase in Russian applications to escape evade since Putin's intrusion of Ukraine February 24 of this current year. The gathering's private wealth migration dashboard watches approximately 150,000 very rich and screens development into and out of 62 nations, including Russia and the UAE. A portion of the development of well-off individuals was normal after an end during the level of the pandemic, yet the gathering says international relations assume a larger part than at any other time. The mass migration of 15,000 of the most extravagant Russians is essential for a tremendous development of individuals reluctant to live under Putin's inexorably off-the-wall despotism. It is hazy assuming those escaping will actually want to take their resources with them, or on the other hand, on the off chance that Putin has muddled the interaction. Different nations on the gathering's watch are China, as most would consider to be normal to shed 10,000 moguls this year because of expanding clampdowns and monetary slumps, as indicated by Fortune magazine. Since China has 823,000 moguls, known as high total assets people, that misfortune might be around 1% of its populace. India and Hong Kong are likewise expected to lose around 2% of their very rich continuously, and yet the nation losing the vast majority of its tycoons is Ukraine, which the gathering says will lose 42% of its greatest spenders. The UAE will purportedly receive the greatest reward from these developments, with an incredible 4,000 moguls previously applying to live there, as indicated by the New World Wealth Information Sheet. Around 3,500 have applied to live in Australia and the rest to Israel, Singapore and Switzerland.